Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for joining us. When you get ready to plan out your spray program for 2013, one of the things we want you to consider is putting new spray nozzles on. You should probably do that just about every year, considering that I'm guessing you probably spray a lot of acres every year. Well, you may be wondering, which spray nozzle should I really use to minimize drift, but also get the very best coverage and best weed control possible? We're going to talk about those things today.
Well, I wish wiping out soybean cyst nematodes was as easy as a spray tip selection, Brian, because soybean cyst nematodes are a growing problem across our soybean acres all over the country. We'll talk about soybean cyst nematode and how you can manage them on today's show.
Well, speaking of managing things, you have to manage our weed of the week if you want to have great yields on your farm. We'll tell you how to do just that later in the show. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we wanted to talk just a little about tile. And I realize that we've talked about drain tile on Ag PhD many times before, but what I wanted to focus on today is how does water exactly get into tile? If you're a non-farmer, we think this is important to understand. And if you're a farmer, you've got to understand this. So let's go through it, Darren.
Well, here's one reason you want to understand it, even if you're a non-farmer. Maybe you're a homeowner. If you are, chances are you have drainage tile running right outside your foundation. Well, where does that water go? It gets into that tile line, it runs right into your sump pump, and then you pump it back out. And that's what you do. You think about how it gets into that line is important.
Yeah, it's the same stuff around the house as what we deal with out in the field. It's just we're kind of on a little bigger level out here in the field. Well, even right behind us, there is some drain tile down in some of the low areas. And what a lot of people believe is that when you get rain, that rainwater is going to go right into the tile line. Right, Darren?
Well, it doesn't exactly work that way. Well, take this year, for example. We were bone dry this fall, and we got a little bit of moisture in the fall. Not very much, but we got a little bit. And what happened to it? Well, it soaked in. But did our tile lines run? No. Not at all.
No.
Didn't even start running.
That's right, because the only way that tile lines run is if the water table, the groundwater table, is above the level of the tile line. So for example, out in fields, we commonly put in the drain tile at 3 feet deep. We do that because we just want to have roughly 2.5 to 3 feet of good area for roots to grow. That's really about all we need to raise a great crop. Okay, so we put the tile lines in at 3 feet deep. As long as the water table is below 3 feet, then the tile lines never run. So in a drought year like this year, everybody says, oh, those tile lines have to hurt you in a drought year. They're going to take out all your moisture. No, they didn't even run because the water table was below the level of the tile line. And the way that water is going to get into the tile line is when that water table rises, then as soon as it gets up to above the level of the tile line, you'll actually see water coming in where the water starts seeping in from underneath. It's the pressure of that water that's pushing against that pipe, and it starts pushing the water in from the bottom rather than dropping in from the top every time it rains.
Well, that is a little bit unusual, Brian. Not exactly what you would think. Now, when we talk about the tile, there are actually different size holes that you can put on depending on what type of soil that you're in. You could also put a sock over that hole if you're worried about soil falling in as the water moves into the tile line. There's a number of different styles of drainage tile. The water's still going to get in the same way regardless of which style you have.
Yep, so the most important thing we wanted you to get out of all this is just to know that wherever you place that tile, I don't care if it's around your house or out in your field, unless the water table is above that level, your tile line is not going to run. So for example, let's just talk about around the house real quick. If you put your tile line up relatively high, let's say your basement is down 8 feet in the ground and you put your tile at, let's call it 5 feet in the ground, well, you actually could have the water table at 6 feet and it could probably be entering your house and you wouldn't be doing anything. You'd say, oh, my sump pump's not running. How can water still be getting in here? Well, it's elementary because the water table is not up to the level of the tile line. You have to make sure you set your tile line at the level you want the water table to be, at the maximum level you want the water table to be.
Well, you certainly can control that water table level in your fields or around your home, but can you control this week's weed? We'll show you how to do it later in the show.
You expect a lot from this seed, and as it grows through each stage of development, Agroculture Liquid Fertilizers is there, feeding your crop exactly what it needs when it needs it. So no matter how you fertilize, no matter when, AgroLiquid efficiently brings all the nutrients your crop needs for a great harvest. From 1 kernel in the ground to 600 on the ear. For better yields and better quality, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers.
In the world of four-wheel drive tractors, there is no name more powerful than Steiger. The newest addition to the powerful Case IH Steiger line is the Steiger Rowtrack, available at Titan Machinery. Designed for row crop use, the Rowtrack provides more maneuverability and reduces compaction while maintaining power and performance. It's available with 16, 18, or 24-inch tracks for row spacing as narrow as 20 inches. Visit your Titan Machinery dealer today to learn more about the Case IH Steiger Rowtrack. Titan Machinery, better solutions.
For lower costs and higher production, see your Mandaco dealer. Ask about the best production-built land roller on the market. Mandaco, simple design for easy transport and easy use. 12 to 62 foot widths, heavy-duty 4x8 by 3/8 inch tube frame, and now available with a steerable wing wheel. Mandaco land rollers. Improved soil to seed contact, faster, more uniform germination, less moisture loss. Eliminate downtime due to rocks. See your Mandaco dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call 877-915-8790.
For years, FarmLogic has been the easiest and most convenient way to keep up with your farming operations. Well, it just got better. Introducing FarmPad for your phone. You always have your phone with you, so entering records as they happen is as easy as a touch of a button. Chemical database, GPS, service records, and more. When you do it on the farm, save it on your phone and it's backed up forever. Call or visit farmlogic.com for a free trial and find out why FarmLogic is the best decision tool for the farm.
Back in 1966, Advanced Drainage Systems, Inc. was the first company to start manufacturing plastic agricultural drainage pipe in the United States. And today, ADS continues our leadership with superior pipe production and service capabilities. Our roots are firmly entrenched in the agriculture industry, and we're committed to helping farmers grow their business. With 54 manufacturing plants and 24 distribution yards throughout the world, you can count on ADS and our green striped pipe to be there when you need us. Advanced Drainage Systems, the green striped pipe you can count on.
Spray nozzles. It's something, Darren, we've been talking about for years.
This is an exciting topic, Brian.
Yeah, it really is. So please don't change the channel. We want to talk to you about this exciting topic of spray nozzles. But seriously, when you stop and think about, okay, I want to raise a great crop, I want to make a lot of money next year, are you going to be able to do that if you don't do a good job of weed, insect, and disease control? Probably not. And spray nozzles are one of the keys to getting that control.
Well, I think of the tens of thousands of dollars that we're going to spend on weed control on our farm. It's all going to run through a spray nozzle. So those tiny little nozzles that really don't cost all that much money, and we're going to say, oh, you know, they're on the sprayer, they'll be fine from year to year. No way. We're going to look at those spray nozzles several times through the year, and then we're going to definitely look at them from year to year and consider how many dollars are running through them. We want every dollar we spend on weed control on our farm to be spent well. We don't want to have an erratic nozzle out there that's either wasting product or just not doing a good job hitting the weeds we want to hit.
Now, unfortunately, I can't give you a set guideline to tell you, well, if you get 50 acres, if you get 100 acres per nozzle out, you absolutely should be replacing that. I don't know, because it depends on what type of product you run through, how long the product sits in that nozzle, the type of nozzle that you got in the first place, the material the nozzle's made out of. So there are a lot of factors that enter into that. Just talk to your pesticide dealer or talk to your sprayer dealer. But the main thing we want you to understand is if you don't have a good spray pattern, you're absolutely not going to have the control that you want out there. You're going to have a bunch of streaks out in the field. You're just not going to be happy. So definitely consider switching out your spray nozzles once a year or at least every other year on most sprayers around the country.
Okay, here's the other thing, Brian. As you're spraying different products that you're very concerned about drift, keep in mind that if you want a drift control nozzle, you're probably going to have to give up some control, or you're probably going to have to give up some spray coverage, because you're going to get bigger droplets, and it's going to be harder for big droplets to hit leaves, land on them, and stick. Now, there may be some different spray additives you can use to help you with that, so it isn't quite as much of a decrease in spray coverage switching from that flat fan nozzle and smaller droplets. But you've got to be aware of that. Now, there's a couple other products that are coming up that are going to have new spray tip recommendations. For example, dicamba tolerant crops, whether it's corn, soybeans, cotton, whatever it may be. Monsanto and BASF are going to have new recommendations for their new product that's coming out, Ingenia. You're also going to see new recommendations when the 2,4-D tolerant crops hit, and we're using the new Enlist products for the Enlist tolerant crops. So we'll be using that on corn and soybeans and cotton as well. Corn as early perhaps as this spring. So if you're going to be trying some of this new product, this Enlist Duo, that's the new Enlist, which is a version of 2,4-D, much different than anything else that's been out, but also that has Roundup in the tank. We're going to be concerned about drift. Now, we've got a pretty good formulation. I'm not saying they don't, but you have Roundup in there, and anytime you're spraying Roundup, you're certainly concerned about where that's going to land. So definitely, if you're using some of these new technologies for herbicide-tolerant crops, check into the spray nozzle recommendations those companies are making, because believe me, they're spending a lot of money trying to learn which spray tips are going to work the best with their products and their crops.
Okay, so Darren said you're going to have less coverage and less control when you switch over to these nozzles. And again, what he said was the reason why is the spray droplet is bigger. But I just want to make sure that you're clear on why we have this difference. If you can get a whole bunch of little droplets as opposed to one big droplet, think about that great big droplet. It's much more likely to splash off that leaf. It's much less likely to stick on the leaf. And yes, we know that with big droplets, they have more weight. They're going to reach the ground or reach the target faster, and they're going to reach the target most likely because they have more weight to them. They're much less likely to drift is what I'm trying to say. So with the small droplets, if you want to just use an extended range flat fan nozzle, for example, you're going to have small droplets with that extended range flat fan nozzle, which is great for spray coverage, and sometimes you will get just slightly better control than using that turbo T-jet or air induction nozzle, where you'll have the bigger droplet. So what I'm trying to say here is, it's great that you want to reduce drift, but I want you to think about how many weeds do I really have in the field? If I only have a handful, I don't mind giving up a little bit of control. But if I have an absolute disaster in a field, then I want you to consider using that flat fan nozzle that has the small droplets and will give you more drift, but spray it on a good day. Then take your windier days, I'm not saying real windy, but your windier days when the wind's blowing 5 to 10 miles an hour, and on those days, you want to spray your cleaner fields with the turbo T-jet or air induction nozzle.
Well, the important thing, Brian, is you don't know when that's going to happen. You may be out spraying like right now and it's still, there's no wind at all.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden a gust comes up and here comes a front passing through, and now we've got 10-mile-an-hour winds. Well, if you've got a triple nozzle body or maybe a 5-way nozzle body, you can just walk out behind your sprayer, click, 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 and in a minute or less, you've switched all your nozzles from a drift control type nozzle over to a flat fan nozzle or whatever you want to switch to. You can do it really quickly and easily right in the middle of a field.
Okay, the other thing that we want you to understand is different pesticides have different requirements. With Roundup, with Banville, those types of products, they're going to move through the plant. Okay, when you get products like Liberty that doesn't move that well through the plant, and especially Gramoxone or Buctril, some real contact killers, you have to have better spray coverage. And really, we aren't as worried about drift with those products anyway. So just keep that in mind. If you start mixing a product that drifts with a product that doesn't drift, but it doesn't have very good systemic activity, which nozzle should you really go with? You want to look at what your main target is. So for example, if the main thing you're after when you're out spraying is disease control, and you throw a little bit of Roundup in because you have a couple of weeds left out in the field, I would absolutely use my extended range flat fan nozzle. It will give you much better spray coverage than the turbo T-jet or air induction nozzle.
Well, to wrap things up, Brian, there's actually a lot more to this discussion about spray tips. So you have to be really thinking about this as you're moving into the next year. So do a little research on it. If you're using one nozzle to spray all your products on all the different weather conditions, you're doing something wrong. You need to be using different nozzles for different products, and you also need to be switching as weather conditions change on your farm.
Well, another reason why you may need to switch nozzles is if you're trying to control our Weed of the Week, there are a few products that will work. We'll talk about our Weed of the Week coming up later in the show.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Quick Roots is applied to the seeds so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Quick Roots today.
There are more mouths to feed than ever before. What are farmers doing to meet the challenge? They're using agronomically designed equipment from Case IH. Our Quadtrac technology, soil management, and planting systems are designed to foster a better growing environment that helps farmers maximize yield potential. And our deep understanding of agriculture is preparing them for the challenges ahead. Will you be ready?
I'm ready.
Go to caseih.com to learn more.
You can't fill a barrel any fuller than its lowest stave, and your crops can't do any better than the nutrient that's in shortest supply. Your yield potential is only as good as the weakest nutrient in your fertilizer program. Give your crops more than just NPK. Prescription apply all the micronutrients your crop needs, each one customized for your crop's potential. MicroLink, linking yield to potential.
Speed, strength, and efficiency make Capello corn heads a head above the rest. Built with polymer components that exceed industry standards, Capello corn heads continue to push the boundaries for maximizing grain retention while using less energy. Visit CapelloUSA.com and learn more about Capello's state-of-the-art chopping technology that cuts cleaner, allowing your horsepower to remain where it belongs, with your combine, so you can harvest faster in all weather conditions. Add to that an amazing folding feature, and it's clear to see why Capello is a head above the rest.
Everything is better to the power of Nutrisphere N. Proven to shield against leaching, volatilization, and denitrification, Nutrisphere N Nitrogen Fertilizer Manager helps you maximize the efficiency of your nitrogen applications. In fact, research shows that in 184 corn trials, Nutrisphere N increases yields by an average of 13.2 bushels per acre. Do the math for yourself. Contact your local fertilizer dealer today and take your operation to the power of Nutrisphere N.
Soybean cyst nematode. You know, Darren, I was just kind of laughing inside my head when I heard you in our open today talk about cyst nematode and there's no simple solution. There's a very simple solution to soybean cyst nematode. Don't plant soybeans.
Yeah, that's going to work, Brian. Yeah. No.
It does. It works great.
Well, it does, but now you're just giving up your freedom to choose what crop you want to raise. I don't want some little pest telling me that I can't raise that crop anymore. Now, you do have to be smart. If you've got soybean cyst nematode, it's not something like a weed that you can just go out, spray, kill, and it's over, and now you don't have it anymore. No, this is a pest that's going to be out there probably forever. We don't really have a good answer right now to completely wipe out nematodes where they just disappear. And even if we did, chances are we just spread them right back into the field, you know, with wildlife moving through the field or with equipment moving from one field to the next. We've got to actually have a thoughtful plan to manage soybean cyst nematode populations.
Okay, so where this plan begins, and in all seriousness, I don't probably want to plant soybeans every year, and I probably don't want to plant soybeans every other year if I've got an absolute disaster with soybean cyst nematode. I might want to go 2 years corn, or 1 year corn, 1 year wheat, and go back to soybeans then. Something like that. Do that for a little while to get the numbers down a little bit. That would probably be my first step. The second step is going to be picking out a soybean variety that has some type of resistance. Now, there are different resistance types. What do you recommend, Darren?
Well, many of the soybean varieties on the market today have the Fayette gene or the PI88788 gene. And you know, that's nice, and I'm glad we have a resistance gene, but you know what? Cyst nematodes are finding a way around it, and it's not working as well as it once did. And there are better genes out there, like the Peking trait, that would work great. Peking's awesome for soybean cyst nematode resistance, and we see a lot less colonization on those roots on Peking plants. The problem is we also see less beans on those plants for the most part, so far we don't really have great yielding varieties with Peking just yet.
Okay, so if you're not planting soybeans every year or not planting them every other year, you're picking the right soybean varieties. Beyond that, at this point, there's not a whole lot else you can do other than trying to make everything else in your field great. Because what we found is the less stress a soybean plant has, the less impact cyst nematodes have on that plant.
Well, you can say that, Brian, but there are some things you can do. Like, for example, you could use Poncho Votivo as your seed treatment. Now, it's certainly not perfect, and it's not going to kill the nematodes, but it'll repel them and keep them off the roots. Now, are you going to get
the yield has been questionable. On a lot of fields, we've only seen 1 bushel yield difference.
Well, it depends, Brian, and this is part of the deal with soybean cyst nematodes is they're going to be worse in pockets out in the field. Now, if you knew exactly where they were, like let's just say you're grid sampling for soybean cyst nematodes and you're going to do it maybe 3 or 4 times during the growing season, because those populations are going up and down, and you may happen to pull your sample on a day where they're really down. You know, if you did it a few times, I know that'd be costly, but if you did, you could really get an idea of where those soybean cyst nematodes are bad out in your field. If you did no-till and tried not to spread them around, you could probably manage it that way, and just do the poncho votivo in those areas where the cyst nematode populations were heavy. They had really big yield gains.
Yes, and that's true. And you can do that even with yield maps and just say, okay, well, where the yield is really low, that's where my cyst nematode problem is really bad. But the whole problem is we don't have planters today where I can have the one seed going and then I totally switch to seed B. It just doesn't work that way.
All right, well, what about those products that actually do kill nematodes and nematicides?
There are a lot of companies that are looking at this thing because many people believe that in the United States, the #1 yield robber in soybeans is soybean cyst nematode. So it's an issue that's spread all over the country. It is a major problem. Unfortunately, all we can tell you today is don't plant soybeans as often, plant the right varieties, and use some Votivo or some other biological product that may be coming on the market.
Well, you've also got to have great weed control, Brian, because there are some weeds that are known hosts for soybean cyst nematode. Fortunately, our weed of the week is not. We'll show you how to control this tough weed coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
You work to protect your farm's legacy and to keep it going. Introducing the Enlist Weed Control System, an advanced herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate for exceptional control of tough weeds. The next chapter begins.
Our weed of the week is Broadleaf Signalgrass. Now, with a name like Broadleaf Signalgrass, what is it?
That's confusing, Darren.
Well,
what is it?
It's actually a grass. And what broadleaf signalgrass often gets confused for is large crabgrass because, you know, it kind of looks like it until you look a little bit closer.
Well, with large crabgrass, you're going to have a membranous ligule, and you're not going to have that with the broadleaf signalgrass. There are going to be some tufts of hair on there, so you have to look real closely at that ligule. You might have to pull out your little microscope or a little...
And you can also look at the leaf, because on large crabgrass it's going to be a hairy leaf surface, where the broadleaf signalgrass will have hairs up the stem, but not out on the leaf. The other thing that's really a dead giveaway is broadleaf signalgrass will actually start rooting at the joints. So the joints that kind of lay on the ground can actually send down their own roots. So it does get to be a tough weed. It's a very prolific seed producer, and it's especially a big problem in corn because, of course, it's a grass crop.
Yeah, but in corn, we do have Roundup. This weed has not developed resistance to Roundup, at least yet. So if you go out there with a decent rate of Roundup, you really shouldn't have a big problem,
No,
right?
and if you start with a high rate of a pre, where I think the problem comes in is the Roundup Ready rates they kind of got known as, because guys would say, oh, I'm planting Roundup Ready corn, so I'll just cut my rate back to half the normal rate. All of a sudden, we really started having problems with broadleaf signalgrass. Now, the pre's aren't exactly perfect on it, but you can do a nice job with things like harness, surpass, dual outlook. Even balanced flex isn't too bad, getting a good start on broadleaf signalgrass. Then you come back timely with Roundup or Liberty, or Accent if you have conventional corn, will actually get it up to about 2 inches tall.
It's always more difficult controlling grasses in a grass crop like corn, but when you switch to a broadleaf crop like soybeans, it's really not that tough. You can start with Trefland, Soundland, Prowl, clean it up with one of the grass killers later on. It's not as big a deal, and of course there is Roundup and Liberty available in Roundup and Liberty soybeans.
Well, this is typically a weed that we see in the southeastern part of the United States. We don't see it as much in the north. In fact, we've never had it on our farm.
Okay, and wheat, Darren, don't have a lot of good answers there, do you?
Well, no, I don't. There's really nothing labeled. I mean, you could certainly try starting out with Prepare Pre-Emerge. At least it's going to give you some suppression. Then post-emerge, you could come back in with the different wheat grass killers. But again, with a weed like broadleaf signalgrass that we just don't have much experience with in wheat, can't give you a great recommendation. I would just say try and get in there real early so the weed isn't big and you'll have a better shot at getting it.
And do everything you can to raise a great wheat crop and choke that signalgrass out. Well, once again, our weed of the week is broadleaf signalgrass. That's all our time for the weed. But stay tuned, Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
What are farmers doing to feed the planet? They're using Quadtrac technology, soil management, and planting systems from Case IH to foster a better growing environment that maximizes yield potential. Visit caseih.com to be ready.
Your seed for next spring needs to be handled delicately. We'll give you a few ideas in today's Iron Talk. Soybean seed for this spring, well, it's not nearly as high a quality seed as we've become accustomed to. Hot, dry weather across the country led to stressful growing conditions for the crop. The result is a brittle, dry seed with odd shapes and poor seed coats. Don't get me wrong, there is some decent looking seed around, but many large seed companies are already tagging soybean seed at 80% germination or even less, when most years 90% germination is the standard. So what can you do to be even more gentle to your seed? These rules hold true for seed companies taking seed out of the bins right now, and also for you in the spring. Number 1, belt veyors. Belt veyors are much more gentle on the seed than augers or even vacs. You just have to be careful to load them so they don't hit a metal piece at the end of the auger or drop a long distance into a bin, wagon, or truck. If soybeans can land on a pile of other soybeans and drop no more than a foot or two, you'll end up with much less breakage and internal damage to the seed. Second, moisture content. If you can use aeration fans to get the moisture content of your soybeans in bins up to 12 or 13%, you'll have a lot more forgiveness in handling than if your beans are 6, 7, or 8% like many were this fall. Number 3 is temperature. Warmer temperatures result in much less damage to seed. If the beans are above freezing and the air temperature is too, you'll be in much better shape. So yes, this seed is not in as good a condition as we'd like to see it for the coming spring, so handle it gently, as seed is a living, breathing thing, and you'll preserve germination, vigor, and yield potential. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show. Don't miss this year's free Ag PhD Winter Workshops. At Ag PhD, we're all about helping you raise better crops and earn more money on your farm. We'll talk about drought-proofing your crop, weed and rootworm resistance, how to improve your fertility program, and on-farm trials and field tests. We'll also tell you the good and bad about the new products and technologies on the market, and give you our recommendations for pest control and a host of different crops. You'll get some insights on new farm regulations and tax laws going forward, and as always, you'll receive a free agronomy manual. Learn more and sign up today at agphd.com.
Advanced farming systems from Case IH helps producers be ready. Our precision farming solution is less complex and built right into our equipment. Factory integrated with open architecture, AFS works with all of your implements, no matter what color they are. And our team of dedicated specialists are here to keep you rolling 24/7, 365. The world of farming is changing. Will you be ready?
I'm ready.
For years, FarmLogic has been the easiest and most convenient way to keep up with your farming operations. Well, it just got better. Introducing FarmPad for your phone. You always have your phone with you, so entering records as they happen is as easy as a touch of a button. Chemical database, GPS, service records, and more. When you do it on the farm, save it on your phone and it's backed up forever. Call or visit farmlogic.com for a free trial and find out why FarmLogic is the best decision tool for the farm.
For lower costs and higher production, Mandaco leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Twister's ease of maintenance is forgiving in rocks and has contour conformity equaling zero downtime. Our hydraulically adjusted coulter angles make residue management easier and less costly. Spring or fall, the Mandaco Twister vertical tillage unit is the new leader. See your Mandaco dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call 877-915-8790.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
The all-new S-Cube commercial tender is the only tender on the market with poly tanks, giving you the capability to haul seed, fertilizer, water, or liquid fertilizer. Each cube can hold 300 units of seed, 2,000 gallons of liquid, or 300 cubic feet of fertilizer. Options include full functioning wireless remote, stainless steel conveyors, and self-contained hydraulics. Get yours today at Norwood Sales.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but be sure to join us again next time for another Iron Talk, Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, and a whole lot more. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
Farmers often inject plant nutrients into the seed furrow or even 8 to 10 inches deep in the soil. Such practices protect rivers and lakes by keeping fertilizer safely under the soil where only crops can get to it. For more information, visit rnmf.org.